April 11th, 1945. The deep, dark woods of the Sächsische Schweiz, south of Dresden. The air is thick with the smell of pine resin, damp earth, and the cold, metallic tang of fear. Major Thomas Tip O'Neill of the U.S. Army's T-Force, 12th Army Group, adjusts the .45 on his hip. This is not a combat patrol. This is a treasure hunt in the middle of a collapsing empire. O'Neill and his team, 2 engineers from CIOS, the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee, and a platoon of weary GIs for security, are moving cautiously down a heavily rutted logging trail. The front line is fluid. It could be 10 miles east, or it could be over the next hill. Pockets of SS, Volkssturm, and fanatical Hitler-Jugend are still fighting, ignoring the reality that the war is, for all intents and purposes, over. They are following a blacklist target. Target 2A44. Junkers Messerschmitt Dispersal Site, codename Schwalbe. For months, Allied bomber crews had returned to England, their B-17s and Lancasters ripped to shreds with frantic reports. They spoke of flame jets, Comet planes, German interceptors that attacked at impossible speeds, over 540 miles per hour, appearing in their formations without warning. They had no propellers. They climbed like rockets. Allied High Command knew of them. They had a name for the most common one, Messerschmitt Me-262, the Swallow, but they couldn't find them. Allied reconnaissance flights over the massive, bombed-out husks of German aircraft factories at Regensburg or Augsburg showed nothing. The production lines had vanished. A scout up ahead raises a fist. O'Neill's team fans out, weapons ready. The scout points, not at a soldier, but at the ground. Through the muck, O'Neill sees it. A set of narrow-gauge railway tracks, freshly used, disappearing directly into a wall of dense foliage. "Sergeant, get that canvas," O'Neill mutters. 2 soldiers pull at a massive, heavy camouflage net, woven with fresh pine boughs. The net comes away, and the team freezes. It is not a cave. It is a tunnel, bored into the sandstone hillside. And from the darkness, a shape emerges. A sleek, shark-like fuselage, painted in a mottled gray-blue. Its wings are swept back at a sharp, aggressive angle. Underneath them, 2 engine pods, Junkers Jumo 004 turbojets, wait silently. "My God," one of the engineers whispers, stepping forward to touch the cold metal. "It's brand new. Look at the stenciling." As their eyes adjust to the gloom, the true scale of the discovery unfolds. The tunnel is not a hiding place. It is a factory. Deeper inside, beyond the range of the spring sunlight, the cave system opens into a vast, artificially lit cavern. A dozen more fuselages, in various states of assembly, sit on wooden jigs. Engines hang from chain hoists. The air smells of hydraulic fluid, paint, and ozone. In the corners, they find boxes of turbine blades, delicate and precise, looking more like jewelry than aircraft parts. And workers, dozens of them, not German engineers, but skeletal, hollow-eyed men in striped uniforms, slave laborers from a nearby concentration camp. This is the secret. This is how Germany, even as its cities were being pounded into dust, was still producing the most advanced weapon system in the world. Albert Speer, the Minister of Armaments, had taken the factories apart. He had scattered them across the Reich, hiding them in tunnels, motorway underpasses, barns, and here, in the deep, unbombable forests. The Me-262 was not being built in a factory. It was being built in Germany. O'Neill's radio operator is already calling for reinforcements. They have secured the site, but the realization is chilling. The Germans weren't just hiding. They were innovating. This forest factory was just one piece of a puzzle. What other miracles, O'Neill wonders, are still hidden in the woods? April 14th, 1945. Friedrich Roda, a small town nestled in the Thuringian forest. The jeep carrying Captain Robert Calhoun bounces violently over the cobblestones of a village square that smells of sour milk and burnt timber. Calhoun, a sharp-eyed aeronautical engineer pulled from NASA and given a uniform, leads a lusty team, short for Luftwaffe Secret Technology. While O'Neill's T-Force hunted for production, Calhoun's men hunted for ideas. They were after the wind tunnels, the research data, the prototypes. They are not following a black list. They are following a rumor. A local plant manager, sweating in a suit 2 sizes too large, had been liberated near the Gotha wagon fabric factory. In exchange for a K-ration and a guarantee he wouldn't be mishandled, he offered up a secret. Not a factory, he promised. A workshop. The manager directs them past the village, down a muddy lane, to a large, dilapidated barn. It looks like it hasn't been used in a century. "Here, Hauptmann," the manager says, wringing his hands. It is as they left it. Calhoun's men, a technical sergeant and 4 GIs clutching M1 Garands, spread out, wary of booby traps. The place seems empty. "All right, pop it," Calhoun orders. The GIs strain against the massive wooden doors, the hinges screaming with rust. The doors grind open, throwing a shaft of dusty afternoon light into the cavernous interior, and they all stop. "What the hell?" the sergeant mutters, lowering his rifle. It isn't a plane, not one they recognize. It sits in the center of the barn, perched on landing gear, like a massive, prehistoric bat. There is no fuselage, no tail, no propeller. It is, quite literally, just a wing. A great sweeping crescent of unpainted plywood, 53 feet across, covered in sawdust and bird droppings. 2 large holes, like vacant eyes, stare from the front of the wing's center section, where a cockpit and nose wheel are fared in. "Captain, is it a glider?" a private asks, prodding the wooden skin with his bayonet. "Don't touch anything," Calhoun snaps, his voice uncharacteristically sharp. He walks forward, alone, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He circles the object, his mind racing. This isn't a simple glider. He sees the mounting points for 2 jet engines, nestled deep inside the wing structure. He sees the complex, overlapping drag rudders on the wingtips. He climbs a ladder and peers into the cockpit. It's a steel tube frame, a pilot's seat, a stick, and rudder pedals. But the skin is the thing. It's wood. Simple plywood. "It doesn't make any sense," the sergeant says, joining him. "The skin would rip off. A jet engine would set the whole damn thing on fire." "No, it wouldn't," Calhoun says, his fingers tracing a seam. "Look at this. The craftsmanship. It's like a piece of furniture." He runs his hand over the leading edge. It's smooth. No rivets, no drag. They're obsessed with a clean airfoil. He moves to a workbench in the corner, piled high with blueprints and technical journals. He unrolls a large vellum sheet. His blood runs cold. The print is stamped with a name: Horten, Reimar, and Walter, the Flying Wing brothers. Calhoun had heard whispers about them, dismissed as fringe crackpots by Luftwaffe High Command. But the numbers on this page don't lie. Performance calculations, wind tunnel data, and a designation, CHO 2229V3, the 3rd prototype. The 2 GIs are looking at the engine mounts. "Sir, you gotta see this. The mounts are scorched. They flew this thing." Calhoun is barely listening. He's staring at a different set of notes, scrawled in the margins of a technical manual. Notes that talk about mixing coal, charcoal dust, with the wood glue for the skin. He looks back at the plywood. Charcoal. A non-metallic construction, a shape with no hard vertical or flat surfaces to return a signal. "Holy Mother of God," Calhoun whispers. The sergeant leans in. "What is it, Cap?" "It's not just a fast plane, Sergeant," Calhoun says, looking back at the alien shape in the darkness. "They were building a plane that radar can't see. A stealth bomber. He looks at the primitive barn, at the medieval forest outside, and then at the object. It wasn't from 1945. It looked like it was from 1985. The Germans hadn't just been late with their miracle weapons. They had been, in this dusty barn, on the verge of making Allied air power completely obsolete. April 25th, 1945. Göttingen Airfield, central Germany. The rain is relentless, turning the captured Luftwaffe base into a sea of mud. Colonel Harold Hal Watson, U.S. Army Air Forces, pulls the collar of his trench coat tighter. Watson isn't a combat officer. He's an evaluator. His job is to decide what is junk and what is the future. And the future, he's discovering, is terrifying. The airfield is a graveyard of dreams. Parked in a long, mournful line are the prizes T-forces have dragged out of the surrounding forests, tunnels, and barns. Watson walks the line, his boots sinking into the gravel. To his left, 19 Messerschmitt Me-262s. Some are flyable, their shark-like bodies gleaming in the wet. Others are skeletons, cannibalized for parts by the Germans themselves in a desperate bid to keep their dwindling squadrons airborne. GIs who just weeks ago were diving into foxholes to avoid these blowjobs now clamber over them, smoking cigarettes, marveling at the simplicity of the Jumo 004 jet engines. "Look at this, Colonel," a young major from Air Technical Intelligence calls out, tapping a different plane, an Arido R-234. It's a high-winged, pencil-thin fuselage with a single-seat cockpit made entirely of plexiglass. A jet bomber. They were flying reconnaissance over England with these, from Germany. We never even knew they were there until they were home. Watson nods grimly. But that's not what he came to see. He moves past a collection of exotic, swept-wing rocket planes, the deadly Me-163 Comet, and smaller, bizarre contraptions for suicide missions, the Volksjäger. He stops at the far end of the field, where a massive canvas tarp is stretched over a transport trailer. "This is it, sir," Captain Calhoun says, stepping out from under a wing. He's dirty, exhausted, and has been guarding his prize from the barn with a proprietary zeal. "She's delicate," Watson gestures. The GIs pull the tarp back. The Horten Ho 229 V3 sits in the gray light, looking even more alien than it did in the barn. It seems to absorb the sound, the rain. Watson, a man who helped design the P-47 Thunderbolt, is silent for a full minute. He walks up and touches the plywood skin, still slick with rain. "They really thought this would work," Watson says, more to himself than to Calhoun. "Sir, I've been through the data from the workshop," Calhoun says, his voice low and urgent. "The Horten brothers, they weren't just building a plane. They were testing a theory. This charcoal-laced glue. We ran some tests at the Signals Intel van. It's baffling. It scatters the radar wave. It's not invisible, but it's faint. The return on our SCR-268 radar set is tiny. It would look like a bird if it registered at all." Watson looks from the wooden wing to the Me-262s. "A jet fighter," he muses, "and a stealth bomber, and the V-2 rocket, and they were working on an intercontinental bomber to hit New York, all at the same time." The realization settles on them, colder than the rain. It wasn't one secret weapon. It was an entire generation of new warfare, all happening at once. The Allies had won the war with piston engines, carpet bombing, and sheer industrial might. But here, in this muddy field, was proof that they hadn't been fighting the best technology. They had just been fighting an enemy who had run out of time, fuel, and pilots. "What were they waiting for?" Calhoun asks. "They weren't waiting," Watson says, turning to leave. "They were just late. This whole war. We've been fighting in 1945, while these engineers were living in 1955. He stops and looks back at the line of silent jets. The immediate threat was gone. A new one was just beginning. The Soviets were at the gates of Berlin. Their own T-forces were fanning out, hunting for the same scientists, the same blueprints. The war was over, but the race had just begun. "Crate it up, Captain," Watson orders, his voice hard. "All of it. Get me the Horten brothers. Get me Messerschmitt. Get me Willie effing Messerschmitt's Gardner, if you think he knows what a rivet is. I want every single piece of this on a ship bound for Ohio before the week is out." May 2nd, 1945, the port of Bremerhaven. The harbor is a graveyard of twisted metal, skeletal cranes, and half-sunken U-boats. Rain falls in cold, gray sheets, slicking the cobblestones of the one operational pier. A pier under the strictest guard of the U.S. Ninth Army. Lieutenant David Hersenberg, T-Force, holds a waterlogged manifest and shivers. He's not cold. He's nervous. In front of him, a massive, canvas-shrouded object is being winched with painstaking care into the dark hold of the SS Richard K. Call, a battered Liberty ship. The dock workers and GIs on the detail mutter, calling it Hitler's Bat or the Wooden Ghost. This is Captain Calhoun's prize, the Horten Ho 229 Hersenberg checks his list. Crate 44B Flugzeug, Experimental. He looks down the pier. It's a production line of captured miracles. Crate 12A, a complete Junkers Jumo 004 turbojet, disassembled. Crate 12B, a second Jumo, fully assembled. Crate 31, a complete Me-262, wings removed, fuselage wrapped like a mummy, and so on. The Richard K. Call is a modern-day Noah's Ark, loaded with the predators of a new technological age. This scene is repeating all over the liberated Reich. At Cherbourg, the British are loading their own haul. Acoustic torpedoes, V-2 rocket components, and data from the wind tunnels at Braunschweig. The ghost haul is on. But hardware, as Colonel Watson knew, is useless without the human software to run it. A week later, in a requisitioned villa outside Göttingen, Captain Calhoun sips bitter ersatz coffee and watches a man in a rumpled, ill-fitting suit draw on a chalkboard. The man is thin, intense, and speaks with a quiet, academic passion. This is Reimar Horten. He has been acquired. A smooth, civilian-suited man from the JIOA, the new Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, sits in the corner, taking precise notes. "You see," Horten explains in halting English, sketching a graceful, parabolic curve. "The wing is everything. The fuselage, the tail. It is all drag, parasitic. It is a barn door in the wind. But the wing, the pure wing, it is the most efficient shape. It is natural." "The plywood, Dr. Horten," Calhoun interrupts. "The charcoal dust. Tell them what you told me." Horten looks at the Joe man. "The radar. Funk masquerade. It does not like flat surfaces. It reflects. A wing, all curves, it deflects. The wood does not reflect well. And the coal," he taps his pencil, "the carbon, we believed it would absorb the radar waves, make the aircraft a ghost, a faint signal perhaps, but too late." The Jovi man's pen stops. He looks up. "Dr. Horten, what was the ultimate goal of the 229 program?" Reimar Horten hesitates. He walks to the window, looking out over a garden his family might have had. He turns back, his eyes alight not with fanaticism, but with the pure, dangerous hubris of the engineer. "The 229? The V3 you found? That was a toy, a proof of concept." He erases the 229's drawing and begins to sketch a new shape. It is vastly larger. It has 6 jet engines, all buried within the wing. It is beautiful. This America bomber, the Horten Hosewaint, to fly from Germany to New York with 4,000 kilos of explosives. It would fly at 14,000 meters. So high, so fast, and so quiet to your radar. You would never know we were coming. Not until the bombs fell. The room is deathly silent. Calhoun and the JIOA man exchange a look. They had been stunned by the discovery of the jets in the forest. Now, they are being stunned by the ambition. The Third Reich wasn't just trying to win the war. It was trying to invent an entirely new, global, intercontinental one. And it had come terrifyingly close to succeeding. October 8th, 1945. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. The autumn air is crisp and clear, smelling of cut grass and high-octane aviation fuel. But today, a new smell wafts over the flight line, the acrid kerosene-like odor of a jet engine. Colonel Harold Hal Watson, the same man who stood in the German mud at Göttingen, now stands on clean American tarmac. He nurses a cup of coffee and watches a team of mechanics nervously swarm a captured Messerschmitt Me-262. It's been repainted with U.S. Army Air Force's stars, but its shark-like profile is unmistakable. A young, whip-thin officer with a distinct West Virginia drawl saunters up, chewing gum. This is Captain Chuck Yeager. He's a test pilot, one of the few men who has permission to fly this thing. Colonel? Yeager nods, eyeing the 262 with a mix of suspicion and predatory interest. Heard the Germans had a hell of a time with these. Engines will burn up if you look at them wrong. That's what the data says, Captain, Watson replies. The Jumo 0004s have a service life of about 10, maybe 12 hours. After that, they're scrap. Don't push the throttle too fast on takeoff, or it'll flame out. Don't climb too steep. And God help you if you have to restart it. Yeager just grins. Well, if that's all, sounds like a piece of cake. He climbs in. The cockpit is cramped, the controls simple, almost primitive. But when he fires the engines, the sound is unlike anything else on the field. It's not the throaty roar of a P-51's Merlin engine. It's a high-pitched, terrifying shriek. Yeager taxis out, the plane moving awkwardly on its tricycle landing gear. He lines up, pushes the throttles, slowly, and the 262 begins to roll. And then it accelerates. Watson, watching from the tower, feels his coffee go cold. The 262 doesn't climb, it launches. It's at 5,000 feet before the base's best prop-driven plane, a P-51 Mustang, could have even retracted its landing gear. Yeager is a speck in the sky in under a minute. He's gone for 20 minutes. When he lands, the grin is gone, replaced by a look of profound, almost religious shock. He climbs out, his hands shaking slightly. Colonel, Yeager says, his voice quiet. We're lucky we didn't have to fight 1,000 of those. We're just lucky. That plane, it's a new element. It's not just faster. It's different. Up there, I was the future. Everything else was a target. This realization is happening all over Wright Field and its sister site, Freeman Field. The ghost hall has been unpacked, and America's top engineers are in a state of shock. In Hangar 4, shielded from view, another team is carefully reassembling the Horten Ho 229 V3. They've brought in Jack Northrop, the eccentric, brilliant head of the Northrop Corporation, who has been obsessed with his own flying wing designs for over a decade. Northrop walks around the alien wooden craft, his fingers tracing the plywood skin. He is apoplectic. They did it, he mutters, running his hands over the center section. They solved the lateral stability problem. Look at this. The differential drag rudders. It's simple. Why didn't we? He sees the scorched engine mounts, the charcoal-laced glue, the swept wings. He sees a design that is 20 years ahead of his own best work. He sees, as Calhoun had, the seed of a stealth aircraft. In a debriefing room, the mood is grim. Watson, Calhoun, and a handful of generals are looking at a stark chart. On one side, the P-51 Mustang. Top speed, 437 miles. On the other, the Me-262. Top speed, 540 mph. Gentlemen, a two-star general says, stubbing out a cigar. The war is over. We won. But the next war just started. We didn't defeat German science. We captured it. And so did the Russians. As of today, every propeller plane in our inventory is obsolete. The race is on. The race to understand. The race to copy. And the race to perfect the miracle weapons they had found hidden in the forests of a dead empire. The blueprints for the American F-86 Sabre, with its German pioneered swept wings, were not yet drawn, but they were already conceived, born from the terror and genius found in those dark, wooded factories. November 10th, 1950. 30,000 feet over the Yalu River, North Korea. The sky is a painfully clear, frozen blue. Major Jonathan Deacon Price, U.S. Air Force, is sucking pure oxygen, his body strained against his G-suit. His aircraft, an F-86 Sabre, feels like an extension of his own nervous system. He's not looking for P-51s. He's not even looking for the propeller-driven yaks he flew against at the start of this police action. He's hunting MiGs. Bandits, 2 o'clock high, contrails. His wingman's voice crackles, tight with static and fear. Price banks, and there they are. 2 silver swept-wing darts, MiG-15s. They drop from the sun, and the sky erupts in a 3-point airwax speed ballet that no World War II pilot would have ever recognized. The 2 jets flash past each other at a combined speed of over 1,200 miles per hour. This isn't the lumbering, turning fight of a Spitfire and a 109. This is a battle of energy, of high-speed geometry and gut-crushing G-forces. He's on my tail. I can't shake him. Price wrenches his Sabre into an S-turn, the wings shuddering on the edge of a stall. As the MiG flashes in front of him, he triggers his 650 caliber machine guns. The tracers reach out and miss. The MiG, with its superior climb rate, pulls up into the sun, gone. Damn it, Price breathes, leveling out. The narrator's voice surfaces over the sound of the jet engine's whine. You are watching The Legacy. This is what the T-Forces found in the forest. The F-86 Sabre that Major Price is flying. Its revolutionary swept-back wings are a direct result of captured Messerschmitt data on high-speed aerodynamics. The plane he's in, the first great American jet fighter, was born in the bombed-out research labs of the Third Reich. And the MiG-15 he's fighting? Its engine is a British design, handed over to the Soviets, who perfected it. But its wings, its swept-wing tail, that too comes from the same trove of German data, captured by Soviet T-forces in their own race across a collapsing Germany. This is the echo of 1945. This entire war, fought at the speed of sound, is being waged with the intellectual spoils of those German dispersal sites. The pilots who fought over Germany in 1944 could never have imagined this. The engineers who designed these planes, Willy Messerschmitt, Reimar Horten, were now working under contract for the very powers who had defeated them. The ghost in the barn, the Horten Ho 229, was shipped to America and left in a crate at a government storage facility in Silver Hill, Maryland. It sat, slowly gathering dust, its plywood skin warping, its secrets deemed too radical, too unstable for the time. But the idea was out. The idea planted by Jack Northrop, who would spend the rest of his life vindicating his own flying wing designs. An idea that would lay dormant, waiting for the technology to catch up. It would take 40 years. But in 1989, the world would see the true heir to the Ho 229. Not a plywood, charcoal-dusted curiosity, but a $2 billion marvel of carbon composite materials and fly-by-wire computers. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber. It was Reimar Horten's America bomber, finally brought to life. The Allied investigators who stumbled into those dark forests and dusty barns in 1945 thought they were witnessing the end of a war. They were wrong. They were, in fact, witnessing the prologue. The shapes they found, the swept wing, the jet engine, the stealth airframe, were not the too-late weapons of a failed regime. They were the blueprints for the next 50 years.